I did a series of blues videos in which I talked about improvising using a few notes, most notably these, 5 and 7 on the middle two strings. Now this was for a blues in A. Now, the thorny issue of jazz guitar. Jazz is a word that makes some people think, oh, it's going to be self-indulgent, just lots and lots and lots of notes. Well, some of it may be, but a lot of it is not. And I think for blues players, lots of blues guitarists think, oh, I wish I could play a bit of jazz or just play something that's a bit more in that sort of idiomatic way. Well, I'm going to try and extend that blues video set that I did to include some jazz standards. Now, by jazz standards, I mean things like vocal standards like Autumn Leaves or Fly Me to the Moon or Beautiful Love or whatever it is. Lots of it is very similar in concept. So if you play one jazz standard or two jazz standards, the chances are that you'll just be able to branch out into others. And of course, there's the sort of modern jazz thing, which is kind of doesn't sort of go with that sort of set of classic vocal jazz mainly. Now I'm going to extend this blues idea to Autumn Leaves, which is a very famous jazz standard, and it's in G minor. Now, the 5 and 7 actually work in G minor, with the addition of your last finger on 8th fret. So instead of 5 7 5 7, we've got 5 7 8 and 5 7 8 on the middle two strings. Then, if we go to the second string, or the B string, adding 6th fret. I haven't moved anywhere else apart from those positions. Now, lots of jazz standards work on what are called 2-5-1 progressions, which generally means they go around in a circle of fifths, and that chord chart usually conforms to the main key. So Autumn Leaves I've got in G minor. So if I now press play, I've got my phone here with the iReal Pro app. Have a look at my channel for a demo of that. It's very, very good indeed. And it allows you to practice, but more importantly, it also teaches you that jazz doesn't have to be fast. It can be really slow, it can be really exploratory, it can be really soulful. And that's what I'm going to try and do here. So I've got Autumn Leaves, and I'm going to set a tempo of 110 maybe, which is quite slow. It's a sort of slow swing. Here we go. Everything I played there worked fine, and that actually I went through 8 chords there: C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7, E flat major 7, A half diminished, D 7 flat 13, G minor 6th. You know, those chords, all these 6 13s, half diminished, major 7, most of those notes will go with that key of G minor. Now, the rub with minor chords, or minor progressions like this, is that sometimes you have to change your minor scale to fit what's there. We've got this at the moment. If I put my last finger on the second string on 8th fret, I complete the scale. What I've got there is an Aeolian on G, or the natural minor in G, G natural minor. However, there are a couple of other minor scales that we should be aware of, and that is Harmonic Minor, where that 6th fret on the B string now becomes 7th. But everything else stays the same. We've also got the Melodic Minor, which does this. So I've changed my 6th fret on the G string for 5th fret on the next one, which is basically a semitone up. And then I've got my 7 there. So with that knowledge, the harmonic minor and the melodic minor and the natural minor, you will find that you'll be able to spot where those problems occur. Usually in a minor chord, it's chord 5, where we've got this sort of arrangement. Now that is the 6th chord of this progression. So what I'm going to do is, when we get there, I'm going to alter the scale to make sure that it fits over that chord. Everything else till then will be the same. So it's that D7. I haven't moved from the spot. I haven't done all this lot and lots of arpeggios. I haven't done anything like that at all. So we are kind of touching on the bluesier side of jazz here, which is, to be honest, my sort of favourite style of guitar playing. I love the whole sort of blues thing that crosses over into jazz. I think it's just a more soulful way of playing the blues, or rather a more exploratory way. I shouldn't say soulful. I should say an exploratory way of playing the blues, where you have extra notes. If I just ramp the tempo up to 200 or something that's really fast, I can play slower just to go over those changes. But I need to make sure I'm ready for that chord 5 in a minor chord, because that's where these problems will occur. Came slightly unstuck there because I tried to do an arpeggio that went wrong. Now, arpeggios, what's that? Well, it's actually where you take your first note, you skip a note and you go to the 3rd one instead, then you skip the 4th and go to the 5th, and then generally speaking you would finish with the root note again. However, you could use the 7th. Which means that you can do something like this. And you can also do that skipping a note every time if you start on the 2nd degree. There's the 2nd note, there's the 4th note, there's the 6th, and then the 8th. Ooh. That would work over the 5th chord here. If I just slow that tempo back down again, to 130 maybe, I can do some arpeggiated work. All I did there was to make sure that I wasn't playing a scale. This is the only trouble with learning all the scales, is that you're tempted to just play them rather than use the notes that are within them. Of course, there's nothing, nobody's going to say you played a scale if you play 3 notes in a row. Of course, but if you just it means you're playing a technical exercise rather than thinking about things like the gaps in the notes or vibrato or slides. So you can still play very sort of sort of a blues thing here. And because you've got G minor, I've got my scale, but I've got my blues scale as well, which is 2 frets beneath that. So you could combine those two things. Here's the scale first. Blues scale. start combining that with these other riffs that make it more, you know, sort of attuned to that sort of whole jazz thing. That sounds quite Egyptian, you know. There are lots of people say that about the harmonic minor. You could just try that and see if it works over the other chords as well. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of on the edge of what was acceptable. But you can also continue this scale and just start to work outwards, not necessarily the full octave, but you could work out what notes would work either side of that on the same fret positions. There's my finish the scale, and there's a continuation, 5, 6 and 8 on the E string, the first string. But I haven't moved position at all. So if I just set this a bit faster, you can see how those other notes work. Repeating ideas like that just says something. It's not just technical anymore. You're reiterating an idea. And you could either repeat exactly the same thing or do what I did there, which was more of a scalic thing. But don't be tempted to sort of fall into the trap of playing that scale again. Now, the other way, on the A string and the E string, the 5th and 6th, you could continue your notes. And you begin to find where the octaves are. Like that. This particular jazz standard has got lots and lots of chords in, and it's very much symptomatic of what you'd find in other jazz standards. So if you can negotiate it with the blues scale, if you know what key it's in G minor, oh yeah. You can either use your blues scale, or you could try going up 2 frets and using that pattern just to explore a little bit further. Lots of guitarists say, oh yeah, you've got to be doing this, and they'll try and blow you off the stage. And it just happens in music a hell of a lot. But you have to be convinced of your own musical arguments here. You have to say, well, actually, I'm playing this because this is how I play. And it's not how someone else plays, it's how I play, it's how I want to do it. And that's how music should be. So there we are. There's a little introduction into playing jazz guitar for blues players.